Productions. Farming ain't just all you do on the ranch. Sometimes you gotta get manufacturing. But what productions are worth your time? Is it cheese? Or maybe cereal? How is a farmer to decide? Well, that's where I come in, because today we take a look at each and every single one of the industrious factories and rank all 21 products in the beautiful, beautiful game of Farming Sim 22. So let's go. So here we go, yet another tier list. This time it is productions in Farming Sim 22. So the absolute main thing I will be basing this off of is my own opinion, what I have fun doing, and my own biases, let's be real. Secondly, profitability and what is just really easy to farm, what is easy to make, all that sort of thing. That is going to weigh pretty heavily on my rankings here as well. But yeah, this is all the productions in the game right here. I'll be going over every single one, and let's just get started. So very first up on the list here, we have flour. So I don't think it gets much more simple than flour. It's probably the easiest one to wrap your head around in the entire game. You take grains, you take it off to the flour mill, it gets milled right into flour. Very easy peasy, very, very simple. Obviously, grains are super duper easy to farm, so it would make sense that the production is also super duper straightforward. I'm just gonna do kind of a quick baseline here. I'm gonna put this into B. This is kind of on like the B-C border for me. Flour is one of the few productions in the game that for each active production you have in the facility, it doesn't like slow down the other ones. Meaning you can turn on your oat, you can turn on your barley, you can turn on your wheat, you can turn on your sorghum. All four of those are productions that you can make in the flour mill. So you can turn all of them on, and it's actually going to make just as much as if you had each one turned on separately, rather than a lot of them kind of divided up equally between the productions that you have active. So it's very, very fast. You can make a ton of flour, you can harvest all the different grains and get your flour out. For each product for flour, there's a different profit margin here. It goes from about 134% to 140% end profit. So, you know, if you were to put sorghum in, it has a base price you could sell it for. Comparing that to when you sold it when it was made into flour, the flour would make 140% more profit. So anyways, that's, you know, not a crazy margin or anything like that. I'm pulling a lot of these figures from a really nice chart that a Reddit user made on the Farming Sim subreddit. I'll put a link down to that in the description because I used it quite a lot while making these tier rankings. Talking specifically about flour, some of the other benefits here, it is used in two other productions. Obviously, one of them is bread. These two kind of go really well together. And then the other one's cake, which is going to be your end game product, and we'll talk more about that later. So it being processed into other stuff is always a good benefit, but it definitely doesn't make very much money on its own. Hence why I have it in B and maybe even C. I don't think it's fantastic. I might even drop it down. Now, moving right along to that secondary product that I just mentioned, we have bread here, and I'm also just going to throw that in C. I'm not the biggest fan of bread. It is okay. It makes decent enough money. It's very, very simple. So what you do is you just take your flour here. As soon as that's done, you can send it right to the bakery and make bread. That is the only ingredient required. So very, very simple. It makes a lot of sense if you are farming a lot of grains, like you really like grains. Really makes sense to be making bread, not just flour, unless you're specifically going for the cake. Cake and bread are also both made at the same production point. That is the bakery. So bread puts a 133% end profit, and that gets added on to that flour. You get that flour that's 140% more than sorghum, right? That's its sell price. When you turn that into bread, you get another 133% on top of that number. That being said, grains aren't worth that much, flour's not worth that much, and so bread is not worth that much, unfortunately. That's kind of the main reasons I have them down in C. They're very, very simple, very, very easy to farm and everything, but the profitability is just not there. They just don't make very much, but they are very, very easy, very, very simple. You can make a lot of them easily, like a whole lot of flour and a whole lot of bread. Bread's a bit slower than flour. Bread also has that same thing that for each production in the factory itself, in the bakery, it won't slow down the other one. Basically meaning you can make bread and cake at full speed. They won't slow each other down at all. But yeah, and baseline for both of these, kind of bundling these together, that very, very simple, but kind of boring. C feels pretty appropriate, kind of towards the top of C because very easy. Now, while these two are definitely in the lower profit category, we're starting to get right into the higher profit products here. Now, sugar is a very interesting one. It can make crazy money. The two crops that go into it, however, that's a different story. You got sugar beet and you got sugar cane. Now, anyone who has seen my previous work will know that I absolutely hate sugar cane. I will almost definitely not be using it to make into sugar. However, sugar beet's actually pretty good. It's not super hard to farm or anything. The harvester's kind of bad. I mean, you get so much of it, you can make a ton of sugar. Before I just go into the rest of it here, I'm putting it up in A. I think it's a fantastic production. So with sugar, you can actually put 3 different crops in, technically, because you can put sugar beet in, you can cut the sugar beet to put that in as well, and then obviously sugar cane. Your profit margins there are going to be on the lowest end, it's cut sugar beet at 174%, and then the highest is sugar cane at 210%. Now, while I said most of these, when you turn them on, it's going to divide the production speed between all of the different products, sugar is yet again one of the ones that doesn't do that. Meaning you can have your cut sugar beet, you can have your regular sugar beet, and you can have your sugar cane all processing at max speed to make sugar. That being said, that involves farming sugar cane, which I don't want to do. So whenever I make sugar, I go all in on sugar beet, and it still just prints out the sugar. You get so much of it. You get a ton of sugar beet whenever you farm it, so you're able to just really crank out this sugar. So on top of the already huge profits, sugar is actually really useful in other productions, as you might imagine. It's used in 2 other productions, both of which I like a lot. It's used in chocolate, which we're just about to talk about here, and then obviously in cake as well, one of those endgame productions. At the end of the day, though, this is just a product that you can make a ton of it really easily. It's one of the fastest in the game. You make an absolute ton of sugar. It has a really high profitability. Getting 200% more on sugar beet is really good because sugar beet sells really, really well. Pretty much just like doubling how much you make there is great. So something that can make a ton of its product and has a really high profit margin is just going to be fantastic. So that's why I have it in A. So moving right on to something that can use the sugar, we got chocolate here. So we'll just start. I want chocolate in A as well. Now, I really like sugar, and that's one of the main components of chocolate. The other being milk, of course. So you are going to need to be farming some cows to make your chocolate. One of the biggest things that I like about chocolate is the profit margin. So it is 167% profit margin and profit compared to what you would get if you sold the sugar and milk separately. Now, while 167 might not seem like crazy high, when you put it on top of what already you get from sugar, that's just like massive. Like you make a ton of money from this. Sugar sells super, super well. You get an absolute ton of it. So if you're able to turn it into that chocolate, it is big buckaroos. Now, this is the first of the 3 products that can be made in the dairy. So that being chocolate, butter, and cheese. Now, unfortunately, that is one of those productions I mentioned that for each active production you have in there, it will divide it evenly. So if I had chocolate and butter on, it would make both of them half speed. If I had all 3 of these on, it would produce all of them at, 33% speed. So a third as fast. That's kind of a downside, but I think of all of them, not to spoil the next 2 here, chocolate's the best one, mostly just because it uses that sugar. You want to be able to get that stacking profit margin here, and it is crazy. But yeah, this is just a really high profit product. I think it's really good use of sugar too. Really good end use for sugar. Might even be the best use for milk, but we'll just have to see here. But yeah, chocolate A, fantastic production. So next up, another milk product here, another one made at the dairy that I am not nearly as much of a fan of. Maybe this will shock some people. I'm not sure what the standing on butter is in farming sim, but I am actually going to put this down in D. Is the first one in D for us. So I'll defend myself. I'll explain myself a little bit. Very, very low profit, especially when you compare it to chocolate. The only thing that goes into this is milk. Same with cheese here. Butter specifically only has 111% end profit. Now, milk doesn't really sell that great on its own either. Like, it doesn't have a crazy high price or anything like that. The one nice thing is that it produces really, really fast. I think it's the fastest of the 3 productions at the dairy. The problem is you're going to be getting a ton of it, but it doesn't sell for anything. So yeah, you're just going to have a lot of pallets that are barely worth anything. Now, the main use of butter, and the reason I don't drop it down further, is it is used in cake. That really is the only use for butter in my eyes. That's the only reason I would make it, is if I'm wanting to make cake. And I think that's just kind of lame to have a product that is used in further productions, but it's almost like useless on its own. Like, it's so bad. You compare that to sugar up here. Sugar is fantastic, even if you use it in nothing else. Meanwhile, you have butter here. While you're definitely going to be making money on it, it's not even like comparable. It is so bad unless you're using it in cake. Furthermore, The other two products in the dairy, chocolate and cheese, will go slower if you have butter activated. It's kind of like disincentivized to make it because chocolate's really good, right? And butter's really bad, so you don't want to be slowing down production of your chocolate. So my final opinion on it, if you want to make cake, then make your butter. Otherwise, that is a firm skip for me. So on to cheese. It kind of splits the difference between chocolate and butter for me. Its end profit is 171%, so you compare that to the 111 for butter here, and it is just like night and day. So I think I'll probably actually put this up in B. It's okay. It's not my favorite because it only uses milk. Now, it still will split production with your chocolate. It's not going to be that fantastic. Like, I think it's right on the BC border for me. It is okay, very middle of the road in terms of profits and everything like that, and I just don't like that it slows down chocolate because I think I'd rather make chocolate at the end of the day. Also, it just makes so much more than butter that I feel like another tier or two is just way better, you know? Not too much more for me to say about cheese. I think the main reason to make this is if you don't want to make sugar, don't want to do sugar production at all, but you do want to farm cows. I think that's where cheese really shines. If you don't want to make the chocolate, basically make cheese. If you want to go milk production, skip butter unless you're making cake. But those are the three dairy products there. Pretty solid across the board. I mean, cheese and chocolate are both really good, especially chocolate. Man, yeah, butter is pretty rough. Now we are moving right into the oil production. We got canola, sunflower, and olive oil. These are all made at the same factory. It is the oil mill. It does split production for each one of these that you have turned on, so very similar to the dairy in that way. We will start with canola, and I already know some people aren't going to like this. I got a lot of flack for this in my crop tier list, which if you haven't checked it out, go feel free to check that out, maybe right after this video. I go over every crop in the game, rank it very similarly to this. But canola oil here, I think it is actually my least favorite of these three. It's going to be a little unpopular, but I'm going to just put it in C. Pretty close to D for me, but it has a few numbers working in its favor. It has a decent profit modifier. It's 136% end profits. Very, very, very easy production. Very similar to flour and bread. That's kind of why I have it here. You just farm the canola, you just put it into the oil mill, and you get canola oil out. The things that I think work against it is very similar to why I don't like canola. Canola takes 11 months to grow. It sells pretty well, so that's why the end profit is actually like okay, but its yield is horribly low, especially for something that takes 11 whole months to grow. Now, on top of that, the production speed is going to be very slow because it divides equally between the three. You kind of don't want to be doing all the different oil products, right? You kind of just want to specialize, unless you want to diversify a little bit, and then I guess. But then you're just going to be sitting there with a ton of sunflower, canola, and olives, right? That you can't really process through very quickly. I think canola oil suffers here because it's really hard for me to separate it from farming the crop. While canola is definitely easy to farm, just like the grains, very, very similar. I just hate anything that takes 11 months to grow. I really like doing crop rotations, stuff like that, and you just can't do that with canola. It takes forever to grow. So because of that slowness, I dropped it down to C. Whatever. Canola isn't that great. I'll stand by that. Oh, and so canola oil, none of the oils can be used for anything else, at least in the base game. All these rankings are going to be based on the base game. I'll factor in course play a little bit because I do use it for all of my farming, or, you know, on every single farm I run. So I do consider that a little bit, but otherwise, everything base game. I know there are some productions that use oil to make things like, you know, potato chips or French fries or something like that. I've done it myself with sunflower oil to make French fries in my potato farm series, which you can also check out if you haven't already. 2 hours of me losing my mind over farming potatoes. But moving on to one I actually like a bit more, sunflower oil. Sunflower oil actually doesn't make quite as much money. I'm just going to put it into B here. I think I like it more than cheese. Now, there is this rumor that I wanted to address. A few people brought it up during my crop tier list video. They say that making sunflowers into sunflower oil loses money. So if you just sold the sunflowers by themselves, it would make more money than if you refined it into sunflower oil. And that is actually not true. Maybe it was true in old farm sim games or something like that, but at least in Farming Sim 22, which is what I am basing this off of, it makes money. Compared to selling the sunflowers themselves, sunflower oil makes 132% end profit. I mean, biggest downside, kind of similar to canola, it's slow. You can't have all three of these active, so you kind of have to choose. It helps that sunflower is one of my favorite crops to farm. I really like how it looks aesthetically, so that's just like a personal opinion type thing, but also it is really quick to farm because of the unique headers it has. In the base game, it is the quickest to farm by far, besides maybe like grass or something like that, but that doesn't count. Anything that uses a header, right, like your combine, the sunflower headers move significantly faster than the ones for grains. 6 miles per hour versus 9 miles per hour. Much faster, really fun to farm. I like sunflowers. I don't like canola, so that's why sunflowers up here. That being said, the profit isn't like amazing. Sunflowers aren't like the highest yielding, but still, you know what? It's a fun crop. I like farming sunflowers, so I end up making sunflower oil a lot more than, some of the other ones here. Not naming any names. Canola. Anyway, B feels right around where I would put it. Not the best, but it's a fun crop, so why not? So on to the final of the 3 oils here. We have olive oil. Now, olive oil, a lot of people aren't going to like because they don't like vine crops. They don't like farming olives. Now, on my crop tier list, I think I put olives in B, on that kind of like BA border, because they make a ton of money. Both the vine crops do, olives and grapes there, but they can be very, very tedious to farm. Now, I rate vine crops higher than most people would because I do use courseplay. Courseplay can make it so you can automate the total taking care of the vine crops. So you don't have to do anything really. You can automate the whole thing. You can do what you want for it, but it is a very, very tedious crop to farm on your own. But if you have some AI help, it actually is really easy and they will take care of things just in the background while you're doing other stuff. I like being able to farm my own crop, but also hand it off when I want to. So this is one that's kind of interesting. I like olives a lot, so I think I'm actually just going to put it in A. It makes so much money that it kind of forces my hand to move up there. So olives already are worth a lot on their own, but if you make them into olive oil, it is a 202% end profit. That just means you're going to make a ton of money. Very similar to these two. I'm sensing a theme here. With the caveat here that once again, if I played on console, so I didn't have courseplay available, this would probably be down here. Olives are so annoying to farm. Same with raisins and grapes. They are so annoying to farm that I would put it down here. But because I use courseplay, I am going to put it up in A because that is just crazy profit for something you can have processing in the background if you want to. So yeah, it's really hard to beat for a 1 ingredient production, especially. You only put olives in here. Obviously, that's true for all 3 of the oils, but the profit of 202% on just a 1 ingredient product is really, really good, really high. So it is the best oil. I didn't expect that. I thought it would be sunflower, but I mean, the profit here is too good to be true. They are kind of right next to each other, but you get it. So those are the oils. I would definitely suggest these two. If you want to do vine crops, if you have courseplay and everything, give olive oil a try, make big money. Otherwise, go for sunflower, man. It's fun. If you enjoy canola too, that is fine. I think it is a very solid production if you enjoy canola, but I do not. So I am putting it in C. On to the other vine crop that I mentioned, that would be grapes. So we'll start with grape juice here. Now, this is another one of the ones that will split production for each one of these being turned on. It's in the grape processing plant, so it's just these 2 productions in there, grape juice and raisins. So kind of hard to talk about one without the other, but we'll start here with grape juice. This also maybe will be a little bit shocking, but I'm going to actually put this down in D. Now, I know I just talked about how much money these can make and everything like that. This one, while it definitely can make some big money, don't get me wrong, it being compared to raisins is just like night and day. 212% end profit. That is really good. I won't deny that. If it were a production on its own, I would probably have it a lot higher, but the problem is raisins exist. This is a lot faster than raisins as well, but much lower profit, which I like. Before I continue talking about this, I'm just going to unveil these go up in A. So I guess the biggest problem here is grape juice is just inferior to raisins in every single way across the board. Grape juice will process faster, so you're going to get more product quickly, which can be a benefit, but the profit is just way lower. So talking about raisins, now that we're moving right on to that, this has 232% end profit. Wait, that's crazy. That is such a high modifier for grapes, which already, once again, just like olives, have a very, very high sale price. So these will process a little bit slower than grape juice, but here's the thing, if you got to pick between the two, which you kind of have to do, if you're doing the grape processing plant, they'll divide, they'll go half as slow, which has its benefits, but also has a lot of negatives. I'm probably just going to be choosing one or the other, and I'm definitely choosing raisins. So I think grape juice would be a lot higher if raisins didn't exist, or if they just were in different productions, you know, if they didn't split time with each other. So grape juice is down here. I don't really like it very much. The other thing to say about raisins is it is used in another production, which is also fantastic that you get choices there. It's used in cereal, and not to spoil it too bad, but I'm a big fan of cereal. So that's the thing. I mean, this is just superior in every single way. way. You got to choose between the two. So one's going to be rated high, one's going to be rated low. It is the unfortunate reality, but that is how it goes. Very kind of similar to butter and cheese, honestly. Just the fact that you have to choose means I'm not going to choose these very often. I think they're really bad compared to the other productions there. This one less so, so it's kind of at the top of D. That being said, pretty rough comparison. So yeah, if you want to farm your vine crops, go raisins, go olive oil. Don't go grape juice. Lots of money here. Raisins are fantastic. I think they're very worthy of an A ranking here. So moving right along to something I don't even really consider a production at all. It is honey. It is in the in-game menu. So that's the main reason I'm doing this, and some of the greenhouse stuff here. But this one especially, this is an animal to me. I don't really consider it a production. When you're even building it, it's underneath animals. So whatever. I have my issues with it. I have more issues with it. I'm putting it in D. So I'm putting it in D, but some of the positives first. Obviously, super duper easy. You just put it down. The most expensive one only costs like 20K, and it just pops out honey. That's it. You take those pallets, you can sell them. They can be used for cereal. That is probably the biggest benefit. The other nice thing is that when you put beehives down, if you put them near certain crops within a certain range, it'll give it a tiny little yield boost for pollination. All those bees go out there and pollinate your fields and give it a little yield booster Rooney. Now, the negatives, this thing doesn't make any money. Honey sells really poorly. It produces really slowly. And the most annoying thing is just how tedious this actually is to farm. While it's very simple to start, very cheap, it's one of the only, if not the only production in the game that you can't distribute it to other places or put it on auto sell for that matter. So let's say I'm trying to make my bread, right? It uses flour. What I can do instead of carting all that flour over to the bakery myself is that in the production menu, you can just set something to distributing and it will just automatically send it to that next place. To take it further, if I was feeling a little lazy with my bread, I could just put it on auto sell and it'll just sell it. I'll make a little bit less money, but I don't have to deal with any of the pallets. And that's a pretty major benefit, especially as you scale things up towards that end game where you just have like an insane amount of products coming out, right? That takes a whole lot of time. So that distribution network is priceless. It is so good. None of that exists for honey. You have to go and pick up every single pallet. And furthermore, it has like, a quote unquote internal storage. You can't really see how full it's getting. And if it gets fully backed up, they just don't produce honey. Basically meaning you have to go out there, you have to scoot that pallet off of the production point and it'll just pop out another one. And you're not even sure how many are going to pop out. And it takes a few seconds between. So the tedium is definitely there. It's a little hidden, but it's there. And I really don't like it. I am not a fan of doing this at all. I like the bees. I like making cereal. So it definitely has its positives, but that's really the main reason I'm probably going to be doing it moving forward, outside of some exceptions here and there, or just like spicing up your farm, right? It can be kind of fun to have them just for aesthetics and everything like that. But from profit tedium level, which is where I base a lot of this off of, obviously, it is really bad. If not, you know what? I might even drop it down to F. I think I'm going to do that. I didn't think I would have anything in F, but I'm going to do it. Just the more I talk about it, the more angry I'm getting about honey. Now, don't get me wrong, in real life, love honey, but hey, we're talking about a game here. So moving right along to the greenhouse. So these ones are pretty unique as well. They're all grown in the same little greenhouse. It's just a little thing you can put on your farm. It's very cheap to start as well. The only thing it takes is water. So you would just need to pump some water in, get a tank on the back of your tractor, truck, or whatever, bring some water over. But all three of these are made in the greenhouse. So they're going to be kind of talked about together. That's strawberries, lettuce, and tomatoes, or maters, as I call them. So we'll kind of start with strawberries here. It's the first one of the three, and you're going to see a little bit of a theme. Strawberries produce really quickly but have a low sale price. Lettuce produces the most slowly but has a high sale price, and tomatoes is somewhere in the middle. So strawberries here, I think I actually like them the least of the three, mostly because of the tedium, so it is going down in D. I'm not a big fan. The problem here is that you are going to make a ton of pallets. While you can auto sell them and everything like that, like all the stuff I just talked about with honey, if you want to min-max things, you got to store all these things, and it is just so many pallets. It's too many pallets. It is way too many. So I'm not a big fan. These don't sell for very much, so you're going to have to cart like pallet after pallet after pallet after pallet to the sale point if you're wanting to min-max it, and it just doesn't sell for very much. Feels pretty bad when you're doing that. You will truly be in pallet hell farming this. So I think that's the biggest negative. Now, one of the biggest positives here is that it does go into cake. You do need to be making strawberries to make your cake, to put those little strawberries on the top. Very similar to butter in that way. Like, I don't really want to make it. I don't really want to make strawberries. I don't want to farm strawberries, but I'll do it for cake. cake. For me, that's just lame. So I'm just putting that down in D. I don't like to have to farm something just to make something I actually enjoy later, but that's kind of where strawberries sit for me. So on to lettuce here. Lettuce is better than strawberries. It's probably my favorite of the three, but I still don't like it very much. I'm putting it up in C. It is a lot easier than strawberries because it produces the least amount of pallets of the three. They sell for the highest, so it does have that kind of feel-good nature of, you know, you take it to the sell point there that you want to sell your lettuce at, and you see the big bucks roll in. It's not that big of bucks, okay? It's compared to strawberries, it is, but it really doesn't make that much money. I like the slow speed of this one, of the three, because less pallets means less tedium to farm something that really doesn't make that much money. It's okay. Moving on to tomatoes, I'm also going to put them in C. They're right next to lettuce, but just a little bit less because it produces quicker. Medium growth speed between these two and medium profit, so very middle of the road. It's not nearly as tedious as strawberries, so that's why I have it, you know, kind of a tier above. Kind of wrapping things up on tomatoes, I think my favorite part of tomatoes is that I get to call them miters. Look at that juicy miter, boy. That's my favorite part, and that's not that big of a benefit. So I think these suffer just from the greenhouse not being that good. I will say about the greenhouse, it definitely spices up a farm. You got to love a greenhouse on a farm. It looks cool. It is very aesthetically pleasing. Pumping in all that water is also just annoying compared to some of the other stuff you do for your fields just to grow some products. They're very middle of the road for profits, on the lower end of profits, actually, not even middle of the road. Yeah, this is my ranking. I like lettuce the best just by a slim margin over tomatoes, and I like both of them more than strawberries. Maybe I'm a little harsh on strawberries, but only reason I'm farming these is for cake these days, so that is why they're in D. Now, we move from something that I am not a big fan of to something I am a very big fan of, and that is fabric production. I'm just gonna go off right here and just instantly do this. This goes up in S. Obviously, this is the production that uses cotton and wool. You can take it to the spinnery to be made into fabric. That fabric can either be sold on its own, or it can be further refined into clothes. Fabric gets turned into clothes, just two fabric makes one clothes. So pretty easy conversion there, and that's very simple production. Starting on fabric though, really good profits. So it does take wool, it does take cotton, it does divide production between the two, but the profit margins there are 144% end profit for cotton and 160% end profit for wool. So while it can be fun to farm sheep, it can be very fun to farm cotton. You actually want to only be doing cotton if you want to truly min-max this fabric production, because they slow each other down and the profit margin on your cotton is just so insane. It actually is better to only have cotton being made into fabric. That being said, I like farming sheep. I find it pretty fun. I like all the wool and bringing it up there and kind of just diversifying a little bit. So I usually split it. That's what I've done in my playthroughs and stuff like that. I do a little bit of each to get that fabric. This is another one of those that I'm probably a little biased about here, but I love farming cotton. I love the big giant bales. I find them a ton of fun to move around and harvest and kick back out of the harvesters on the field. I find that pretty funny. I think the square ones especially look super funny, but this is an S ranked one, and I am going to just say it. Clothes are right there too. It's a fun little process too. It's a very natural progression. You get all your cotton or wool, you send it to the spinnery for fabric. You send that with the distribution network especially straight over to be made into clothes. Then you can just sell those when they're at peak pricing and make a ton of money. So as I said, probably a little bit biased here because I like cotton a lot. Wool's pretty good too, but especially cotton. It was one of my top rated crops in my crop tier list because I have so much fun with it. These are S ranked. They make a ton of money. Pretty much everything A and up, you are going to make a huge amount of money if you end up farming. The nice part about cotton as well is you can sell the cotton raw and it's going to make a lot of money. You can sell the fabric and it's going to make a ton of money, and clothes obviously are worth a ton of money. So any part of it can be making a ton of money, but obviously clothes, you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So moving right along. Now these are some productions I haven't messed around with too much. One of the first times I touched lumber farming to a degree where I actually produced these was in my recent video where I made every single production in the game. I ran all 14 of those factories to make all of these products. If you haven't seen it already, go ahead and check it out if you want to see all these more in depth. But we will start with the lumber, the tree farming productions, and that's planks and furniture. Very similar to fabric and clothes. You take your wood, you send it to the sawmill, and that can be made into planks, and then you can send those planks over to your carpentry store to be made into furniture. You can also skip the middleman and take your wood directly to be made into furniture, although it's a little lower efficiency than being made into planks. So planks, I am just going to throw right in B. It has really good profit. Tree farming can be very, very profitable. So wood itself is already worth a decent amount of money. Planks have a 173% end profit. So that's pretty high. That's very good. It also makes wood chips when you make planks. Same with making furniture. It makes it as like a byproduct, secondary product, and those can just be sold. You can also make wood chips separately using like a wood chipper or farming poplar. It's more of a byproduct of these. So it's just a nice little bit of side cash while you're making planks. So that's very nice. Farming lumber is actually very, very tedious. It's hard to automate really any part of the process. I think the only part that you can really automate is the delivery. And even that, I don't think the AI can hit the switch to sell lumber into production points. So that can't even be automated. And the secondary part that's pretty rough about tree farming is that it takes forever. They can take like multiple years to fully grow and get return when you put saplings in the ground. So planks and furniture are definitely more of like a marathon instead of a sprint. You have to bide your time a little bit, find stuff to do in the meantime, or just like rotate your lumber farms if you're going all in on it. Like I said, ton of money coming from planks and from furniture. I'll also put that in B. I'll probably just put it in this order. Ton of money from both of these, but very, very slow because of that tree farming, and very tedious because you got to do it all yourself. That none of that can be automated. I don't even think anything with Courseplay can automate that. So in terms of furniture specifically, it does have a huge profit modifier. You're going to make a lot of money with this. If you put wood directly in there, the end profit value is 250%, so huge. For planks, it is 215%, so compare that to the 173% end profit of the planks. That's really good. This also makes wood chips, as I said, so you get a little bit of the side cash. One thing that's very specific to furniture production is when you put out the pallets, it looks just like those boxes you get from IKEA of all the furniture that you got to assemble yourself. I think that's pretty funny. It makes a lot of sense. So you're basically supplying IKEA with your furniture store, your carpenter. But as I said, very similar problem to planks, just tree farming being very, very slow, but very, very profitable. So if it's something you want to stick out for and go for, try to make those big bucks, definitely go for it. You're going to make a lot of money. It definitely will just take a while. That is why it's in B for me. Okay, so we are getting right into the late game of it, the thick of it here. This is electric charge, but this is actually the biogas. Couldn't find a good thing that just said biogas here from the different pages I pulled this from, but yeah, this is biogas right here. So biogas, it is hard to quantify the exact profit margins, kind of like the rest of these, but it is a definite upgrade over directly selling any of the things you put in here. I'm just going to say right here, before I rant and rave about it too much, I believe this is the best production in the game. I'm putting it at the very top of S. I don't think it's in its own tier. It's kind of on par with these a little bit, but it is better. As I mentioned in my crop tier list, silage is easily the best crop in the entire game to me. And as an extension of that, it goes right into the biogas facility. You can take your silage, and silage already sells for a ton, but if you put it into a biogas, it makes even more money than it normally would. On top of silage, you can also do cut sugar beets, manure, and slurry. All of those can be put into the biogas to make that charge. The way that the biogas works is you put the different products in, meaning silage, sugar beet cut, manure, slurry. You put those in there, and what it's going to do is it's basically going to burn that stuff for energy, and you get paid for the amount of electric charge that it creates, aka the electric charge right here. That's why it's there. And that's just going to be like a monthly thing you get paid at the end of the day. And it makes really, really good money. And more importantly, it's like completely passive. Once you fill it up, it'll process through all the stuff that you already have in there and just give you money at the end of the month. The funny thing is that this technically does divide production between everything that you put in there, but with the amount of electric charge you get from each one, it actually is net result higher to be doing all of them rather than just one. That being said, you're almost definitely going to be doing this with silage as the main one. As I said, silage is king. I feel like a lot of people end up farming it, so you're going to have it in abundance already. So it makes sense to just go ahead and invest in this when you're able to. It makes a ton of money. The one other thing that it does make is this product called digestate. Now, digestate is, like I said, just a byproduct. It can be collected using just like a liquid tank on your tractor, and you can use it very similar to manure or slurry. You can use it to fertilize your fields with one of those spreaders. So you can use it as a money savings. You don't have to buy fertilizer if you use that. Otherwise, you can just sell digestate directly. A lot of people just put it on auto sell directly out of the production facility. And it's just a nice little cash bonus on the side. It's not worth a ton of money or anything like that. It is just a nice little cherry on top of an already amazing production. The smallest one that you can buy is in the base game is about 430,000. That's the small biogas, but the bigger you can do, the better. The biggest one is going to be 1.2 million. That's the one that's on Elm Creek, which is one of the starter maps in Farming Sim 22. Try the biogas out. It is the best production in the game, in my opinion. So our final two productions, and these are kind of what I consider your quote-unquote end game productions. So the reason I consider both of these end game productions is they use multiple other productions to make them, and they also make a ton of money, as you might imagine, because it's a multiple step process to get to making both of these. First up is cereal. It's the more simple one of the two, but it still has a few moving parts. I think I'm going to just go ahead and put this up in A, and it's probably a strong A. I don't know, probably a little bit better than olive oil in my opinion. Now, the profit margin might not sound that big. It is 111% end profit. Now, while that might seem a little bit low, when you consider all the things you put into it, that's a huge modifier on some of the former stuff. One of them being raisins, that goes into cereal, oat goes into cereal, corn, and honey. Now, that has to be the biggest downside of cereal, is that it uses honey. A little bit annoying to manage all those pallets. As I said, it's my least favorite production in the game, just out of context in a vacuum. Don't like honey that much, so that is the biggest downside to making cereal. But if you can kind of push through that, it is really, really easy to make. Oat and corn are both really easy to farm. I've mentioned grains in the past being really, really easy to farm, but so is corn. I've obviously already ranted and raved about raisins, but basically getting a 11% or 111% end profit on raisins, especially, that is so good. It is really, really nice because you're already making a ton of money from this. So obviously making cereal is even bigger bucks. But one of the biggest takeaways here from both cereal and cake as an extension is I find the end game productions are really, really fun. They're not something you're ever going to really start with on a farm unless you start with like, you know, a ton of money and means of production and all that sort of stuff. But they're kind of targets. They're like end game challenges. They're something you kind of have to plan around making, something you have to work towards. It's not something you can just start with. I find that pretty engaging and fun with how I play this game. I like having things to work towards, like having challenges, goals, that sort of thing, and to be really well rewarded when you get there. So cereal is a little bit of a lesser form of that, but cake especially hits that mark. This is the end all be all of productions. This is the big boy, the ultimate creation. I am also going to put this in A. They are kind of difficult to make, so that's why maybe towards the end of A. Cake here has so many farmer productions. So it has strawberries, as I mentioned, it has flour, it has sugar, and it has milk and butter. So you do need to be making butter. It does have two productions I don't like very much, but some of the reason I have them down here is literally because the only reason I want to farm these is to make this bad boy. So the end profit, as I mentioned, is 204%. So when you add that to something like sugar, which I consider one of the best productions in the game, you add that on with flour, butter, strawberries, all that sort of stuff. It just makes so much money. This is a crazy amount of profits, but it is a really big challenge to consistently make. Oh, you also need eggs. I totally forgot about that. So there's multiple different animals you need to farm. There's a lot of moving parts. This is a really big challenge to make and work towards, and I think that's really, really cool. I really enjoy having a target to aim for, as I said, but I find that really engaging. I like having targets to aim for. That will do it for me. This is the official tier list I have for productions in Farming Sim 22. Give me your thoughts. Let me know how you would rank things differently. If you have favorites you think should be higher, things you should be lower, let me know down below. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please make sure to like and subscribe to the video if you aren't already. More content on the way. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.